A Truth TV 7 presents Shem, Ham, and the Africa Question. Part 2, The Conspiracy Full Detail Version. Alright family, welcome back to Truth TV 7. If you watched Part 1, you remember what we established. But because this is so important, we're going to go back over the foundation again, this time with more detail, more scripture, and more dictionary definitions. Because here's what I realized. If you don't fully understand who the Negro is according to the Bible, then the rest of this lesson won't land. So before we talk about the conspiracy in Psalm 83, before we talk about the Moors, before we talk about Timbuktu, we have to reprove who the Negro is. And we're going to do it using nothing but the Bible, the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, and basic genealogy. Let's go. Section 1. Reproving WHO. The Negro is the lineage of Shem. Let me ask you a question. When someone says, Negro, or black person, or African American, today, what do they mean? Most people think it means descendant of Ham. That's what they were taught. That's what the slave masters said. That's what the textbooks imply. But watch what the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary actually says. I'm going to read the entry for Ham word for word. In Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary, Ham entry. Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans and Canaanites. Read it again, not the Negroes. That is not my opinion. That is not a Hotep theory. That is Zondervan, one of the most mainstream, conservative Bible dictionary publishers in the world, admitting that Ham is not the progenitor of the Negroes. So if Ham is not the Negroes, then who are the Negroes? The dictionary doesn't say under Negro, because they don't have a direct entry connecting Negro to Shem. But the Bible does, and that's where we have to go. Let's go to Genesis 10, the Table of Nations. On screen, Genesis 10, 1-5, Shem, Ham, Japheth. Genesis 10, 1, Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. 3 sons, 3 lineages, no mixing. Now watch the lineage of Shem. Genesis 10:21-22, Unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth the elder, even to him were children born. The children of Shem, Elam, and Ishur, and Arphaxad, and Lud, and Aram. Arphaxad is the key, because from Arphaxad comes the line that leads to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, to Judah, and ultimately to the Negroes. Let me trace it for you directly from scripture. Genesis 11:10-12 Shem right pointing arrow Arphaxad right pointing arrow Salah right pointing arrow Eber. Genesis 11:14-15 Eber right pointing arrow Peleg. Genesis 11:16-18 Peleg right pointing arrow Ru. Genesis 11:19-21 Ru right pointing arrow Serug. Genesis 11:22-24 Serug right pointing arrow Nahor. Genesis 11:25-26 Nahor right pointing arrow Terah right pointing arrow Abraham. Now watch carefully. Abraham is a descendant of Shem. That's why he's called Abram the Hebrew. Hebrew comes from Eber, his ancestor. Genesis 21, 2-3 Abraham right pointing arrow Isaac. Genesis 25:26 Isaac right pointing arrow Jacob. Genesis 29:35 Jacob right pointing arrow Judah. Jacob's name is changed to Israel. Genesis 32:28. So his children become the children of Israel. The 12 tribes. Now here's where it connects to us. The Negroes, particularly in the West Indies, America, Jamaica, Haiti, Brazil, have been identified for centuries as primarily coming from the tribe of Judah. Why? Because of the slave trade. Historical records show that the majority of enslaved Africans taken to the Americas came from the West African coast, specifically from the regions of modern-day Ghana, Benin, Nigeria, Ivory Coast. And those regions were heavily populated by the descendants of the tribe of Judah and other Israelite tribes like Benjamin and Levi who migrated there after the Assyrian and Babylonian captivities, and again after the Roman destruction in 70 AD. But you don't even need the slave records. You just need the Bible. Deuteronomy 28 describes the curses that would come upon Israel if they disobeyed. Deuteronomy 28:25, Thou shalt be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. Deuteronomy 28:32, Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people. Deuteronomy 28:36, The Lord shall bring thee, and thy king which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, and there you shall serve other gods, gods of wood and stone. Deuteronomy 28:68, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, and ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen. That's the transatlantic slave trade. In ships, to Egypt, which in prophecy often represents bondage. Sold as bondmen and bondwomen. So the Bible itself predicts that the children of Israel would be taken by ships, sold into slavery, and scattered to nations they didn't know. That's us. So when you put it all together. 1. Zondervan says Ham is not the Negroes. 2. The Bible traces the Israelites through Shem. 3. The Negroes fit the curses of Deuteronomy 28 perfectly. 4. Therefore, the Negroes are the children of Israel, specifically from the tribe of Judah and the other scattered tribes. That's not a theory. That's just following the evidence. Now let me give you the Zondervan entry for Shem so you can see the contrast. Shem, the eldest son of Noah, from whom the Semitic nations are descended. The Hebrews, Assyrians, Elamites, Arameans, Syrians, and Arabs are his descendants. Notice, the Hebrews, that's Israelites, come through Shem, not through Ham. So if you are a Hebrew, an Israelite, you are from Shem. If you are from Shem, you are not from Ham. And Zondervan already told you Ham is not the Negroes. So the only logical conclusion is that the Negroes are from Shem. And if you're from Shem, tracing the line to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, you are a child of Israel. That's the foundation. Now let's talk about the conspiracy. Section 2. The conspiracy text, Psalm 83 verse by verse. Now we go to Psalm 83. This is not just a prayer. This is a prophecy, and more importantly, it is a record of a conspiracy. Let me read it slowly. On screen, Psalm 83, 1-8 KJV. 1. Keep not thou silence, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. 2. For, lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. 3. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. 4. They have said, Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. 5. For they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee. 6. The tabernacles of Edom, and the Ishmaelites, of Moab, and the Hagarenes. 7. Gebal, and Ammon, and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. 8. Ashur also is joined with them, they have holpen the children of Lot. Selah. Now let me break down what this means. Verse 3. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. The word, hidden ones, in Hebrew is saphan. It means concealed, secret, hidden. Why are God's people hidden? Because the conspirators don't want them found. They want to cut off the name of Israel from remembrance. Verse 4. That the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. This is the goal, not just to kill the people. To erase the name, to make sure no one remembers that these people are Israel. How do you do that? You change their name, you change their label, you put them under a different lineage. Verses 6-8 name the conspirators. Edom, descendants of Esau, Jacob's brother, Caucasians. Ishmaelites, descendants of Ishmael, Abraham's son through Hagar, the Arabs. Moab, descendants of Lot's son. Hagarenes, descendants of Hagar, Ishmael's mother. Gebal, a region in Phoenicia. Ammon, another of Lot's sons. Amalek, descendants of Esau, perpetual enemy of Israel. Philistines, ancient enemies from Canaan. Tyre, Phoenician city-state. Ashur, Assyria, later Rome, and the continuation of that spirit. Children of Lot, Moab and Ammon again. These nations have consulted together with one consent. They have a common goal. And that goal, according to verse 4, is to cut off the name of Israel. Now fast forward to today. You don't see armies with banners saying, Edom, or Moab, marching against Israel. The conspiracy has gone underground. It's intellectual, it's historical, it's academic, it's in the way they classify people. Because if you can convince the world that the Negroes are Hamites, then you've just hidden the Shemite lineage. And if you can convince the Negroes themselves that they have no connection to Israel, then you've helped fulfill Psalm 83, 4, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. That's the conspiracy, and it's been working for centuries. Section 3. The method, hiding Shem under Ham. Now let me show you exactly how they did it. Step 1. Broadly label all dark-skinned people as Hamites. In the 19th century, European scholars developed something called Hamitic theory. The basic idea was that any civilization in Africa that showed complexity, architecture, writing, mathematics, must have been built by Hamites, who migrated from somewhere else. Usually, they said those Hamites were Caucasian-like, or non-Negro. But here's the trap: by calling those builders Hamites, they could then claim that Negroes, Shemites, had nothing to do with those civilizations. And they could also claim that Hamites were the real builders, not Israelites. Step 2. Collapse the distinction between Shem and Ham in popular teaching. Most Christians today cannot tell you the difference between Shem and Ham beyond, Ham was cursed. They don't know that Abraham came through Shem. They don't know that Israel came through Shem. They just know, Africa equals Ham. But look at a map of Africa. Is it all one people? One language? One culture? One religion? No, Africa is the most diverse continent on Earth. So why is it treated as one racial category? Because African is a convenient label that hides the specific identities within it. Step 3. Attach non-Israelite groups to the accomplishments of Israelites. Here's what I mean. The Moors built Spain. That's a historical fact. Universities, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, the Moors brought Europe out of the Dark Ages. Now when you bring the Moors into it, the same thing shows up in the records. Because listen to what Samuel Johnson's 1755 dictionary says, and this is a direct quote. A Moor is a Negro, a black a Moor. That's not my opinion, that's the dictionary, right there in black and white. Now, we're going to come back to the Moors in more detail later with more sources. But I wanted you to see that definition now, so as we go through the rest of this lesson, you understand why the conspiracy had to hide the connection between the Moors and the Negroes, and why they had to hide the Negroes' true identity as Israelites. And in that same contrast, Negroes, according to Zondervan and the Bible, are not Hamites, they are Shemites, Israelites. But textbooks will tell you the Moors were North Africans, Berbers, Arabs, or Hamites. Why? Because if they admit the Moors were Negroes, then they have to admit that Negroes built a great civilization. And if they admit that, then they have to admit that Negroes might actually be the children of Israel, which then raises uncomfortable questions about the slave trade, about Deuteronomy 28, about the current Jewish state in modern-day Israel, and about who really has the covenant. And by extension who has rightful possession of the land of Israel, that the Israelis aka the Khazarians and the Palestinians aka the Philistines are fighting over. And all of the gold and jewels and precious stones that belong to us that they stole during the War of the Jews in 70 AD. So instead, they say, the Moors were Hamites. Then they say, the Negroes are Hamites too, even though Zondervan says they're not. And then they say, see, Hamites built everything, not Israelites, not Negroes specifically, just Hamites. That allows them to take credit for Israelite accomplishments without acknowledging Israel. It's a shell game, and the shell is the word, Ham. But once you know that Ham is not the Negroes according to Zondervan, the shell game falls apart. Section 4. The Scattering, Deuteronomy 28 and 70 AD Josephus. Now let me prove that the lineage of Shem that produced the Israelites were scattered into the regions that would later produce the Moors, the Negroes, the Haitians, the Jamaicans, and all the rest. First, Deuteronomy 28. I already read some of it. But let me add more. Verse 25. Thou shalt be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. Verse 37. Thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword, among all nations whither the Lord shall lead thee. Verse 41. Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. Verse 49. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle fleeth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Verse 64. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other. Verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. That's the slave trade, ships. Egypt often symbolic of bondage. Sold as bondmen and bondwomen. So the Bible itself says that the children of Israel would be scattered into Africa, taken by ships, and sold into slavery. Second, Josephus, the Jewish Wars, 70 AD. Flavius Josephus was a black Israelite which some call Jewish historian who lived through the Roman destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. He wrote in detail about what happened to the Israelites after the Romans burned the temple and leveled the city. In the Jewish Wars, Book 6, Chapter 9, Josephus records that over 1,100,000 black Jews were killed during the siege, and nearly 100,000 were taken captive. But here's what most people miss. Those captives were not all kept in Palestine. The Romans scattered them throughout the empire. Many were sent to North Africa, to Egypt, to Spain, to Gaul, modern France, and to the coast of West Africa. Josephus also records that some Israelites voluntarily migrated into Africa before and after the destruction, settling in places like Alexandria, Cyrene, modern Libya, and Carthage, modern Tunisia. Why is this important? Because these North African regions are exactly where the Moorish civilization later emerged. So when you read From Babylon to Timbuktu, and I encourage every one of you to get that book, the author, Rudolf Windsor, traces the migration of Hebrew Israelites from Babylon into West Africa, specifically into the region of Timbuktu. He shows, using historical and biblical evidence, that the children of Israel built the great libraries, universities, and trading networks of the Mali Empire. That's not black nationalist fantasy. That's documented history. So the timeline is 722 BC, Assyrian captivity of the northern 10 tribes, scattered into Media, Persia, and eventually into Africa. 586 BC, Babylonian captivity of Judah, many stayed in Babylon, others migrated into Africa. 70 AD, Roman destruction, mass scattering into North and West Africa, Spain, and the Mediterranean. 701–500 AD, Moorish civilization in Spain and West Africa built by these scattered Israelites. 1500–1800 AD, transatlantic slave trade, the same people taken from West Africa to the Americas. Same people, different names, different labels, but the identity never changed. The Most High knew who they were the whole time. Section 5. The Moor Proof, Israelites equals Moors, full dictionary and historical sources. Now let me prove, with multiple sources, that the Moors were Negroes and the Negroes are Israelites. Source 1. Samuel Johnson's Dictionary of the English Language, 1755. This is the most famous English dictionary before the Oxford English Dictionary. Here's the exact definition. Moor. Noun, Morus, Latin. A Negro, a black a Moor. That's it. No qualifications. No, sometimes. No, North African. Just, a Negro. Source 2. John Ogilvy's Imperial Dictionary of the English Language, 1883. Moor, a black man or a Negro. Again, direct equivalence. Source 3. The Zondervan Bible Dictionary, Ham entry. Already read it. Not the Negroes. So if the Moors are Negroes, and Negroes are not Hamites, then the Moors are not Hamites. That means the Moors must be Shemites. And if they are Shemites, tracing the lineage through Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they are Israelites. Source 4. From Babylon to Timbuktu by Rudolf Windsor. Let me quote directly from this book. The Jews who fled to Africa after the destruction of the first and second temples migrated to different parts of Africa, including West Africa. Some of these Jews built the city of Timbuktu and became known as the Moors. Windsor also traces the name, Moor, to the Hebrew word Maor meaning, a cave, or, a dark place, referring to the dark skin of the Israelites who settled in Africa. Source 5. Josephus, again. In Antiquities of the Jews, Book 1, Chapter 6, Josephus describes the descendants of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. He specifically notes that the descendants of Ham settled in Africa but that the Negro populations of West Africa were not originally Hamites but rather Israelites who migrated later. Source 6. The Bible itself, Lamentations 5:10. Our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. This is the prophet Jeremiah, speaking for the children of Israel after the destruction of Jerusalem. He describes their skin as black, not metaphorical, physical. Source 7. The Bible, Song of Solomon 1:5. I am black, but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem. The Shulamite woman, representing Israel, says she is black. So the Bible itself describes Israelites as black-skinned. Now put it all together. The Bible says Israelites are black. Zondervan says Ham is not the Negroes. Dictionaries say Moors are Negroes. Historical records say Moors built Timbuktu in Spain. Those same records say the builders were scattered Israelites. The only conclusion, the Israelites and the Moors are the same people. And when you understand that, you understand why they work so hard to hide it. Because if the world knows that Negroes are Israelites, and that Israelites built the Moors' civilization, then the entire narrative of black inferiority collapses. And more importantly, the covenant, the promises, and the prophecies of the Bible come back into focus on the people they were originally given to. As President Kennedy said, and I'm going to play the clip, he acknowledged that the Moors were black Americans who built many great civilizations. They know. They've always known. They just didn't want us to know. Here's the clip, and I'll be back.
Inside restricted Vatican corridors,
these were never meant for public viewing.
Icons predating modern classification.
Certain agencies insist this iconography remain concealed. In opposing that position, I have been warned that I may be framed as acting against the state. The iconography we are examining reflects an older European reality, one shaped by Moorish presence and early state power. These images are not symbolic outliers. They were preserved, long predating modern classification. They reflect continuity, cultural and historical. Hidden from the public. Historical material is often misclassified by time and power. The iconography we've examined speaks not only to Europe, but to continuity. That continuity lives on in America today, most visibly through black America. There are elements operating beyond lawful authority within our own government. Their actions place my safety and the integrity of this office at risk. We speak to something older than modern borders. We see the same iconography in old America, because history does not begin where records. This Black Madonna is kept in Washington, preserved and not widely shown. Symbols endure where records fade. Their meaning carries forward.
Section 6. The conclusion, why this matters for Negroes, Haitians, Jamaicans, and all scattered Israelites. So let me bring this home. I know this was a lot. We went through Genesis 10, Psalm 83, Deuteronomy 28, Josephus, Zondervan, Johnson's Dictionary, Ogilvy's Dictionary, From Babylon to Timbuktu, and multiple Bible verses. But here's what it all means for you, whether you're a Negro in America, a Haitian, a Jamaican, a Bajan, a Trini, a black man in Brazil, or anywhere else the ships took you. Number 1. You are not a descendant of Ham, not according to the Bible, not according to Zondervan. That label was put on you to hide your true identity. It's part of the conspiracy from Psalm 83 to cut off the name of Israel from remembrance. Number 2. You are a descendant of Shem, through Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Judah. That makes you a child of Israel. Not spiritually, not metaphorically, literally, by blood, by lineage, by covenant. Number 3. Your ancestors were the Moors. When you look at the great civilization of Timbuktu, the libraries, the universities, the scholars, that's your history. When you look at Moorish Spain, the astronomy, the medicine, the mathematics, the architecture, that's your history. Not because you're African, in some vague sense, but because you're Israelite. Number 4. The Most High scattered you in Deuteronomy 28 and again in 70 AD, but he never forgot you. The curses were real, the slave trade was real, the suffering was real, but so are the promises. And the first step to restoration is knowing who you are. I want Israelites to understand that the Moors were us. Same blood, same God, same covenant. I want people who have anything to say about Israelites to check their sources. If you're going to speak on who we are, you better know the Bible, know the dictionaries, and know the history. I want people who have anything to say about the Moors to understand that according to every primary source, from Josephus to Johnson to Ogilvy to Zondervan to Windsor, the Moors were the scattered children of Israel. This is not division. This is clarity. The Most High does not change. His covenant does not change. And his identification of his people does not change. We are Shem. We are Israel. We are the Moors. And we are not going to let them hide it anymore. This is Truth TV 7. I'm Ezra Drew. Shalom.